The rain hadn't stopped for hours. Wet strands of hair clung to her face as she stepped into the pristine glass doors of Munich's most exclusive luxury car dealership. Everything inside gleamed. Floors polished like mirrors, champagne flutes on silver trays, and cars that cost more than most houses. She didn't belong here, not in her old sneakers, not in her worn-out parka. And she knew it. But she walked in anyway. "Excuse me," she said softly, stopping near a silver Mercedes SLR parked in the center like a crown jewel. "Could I take a look at this one?" The manager at the front desk barely glanced up. He was typing something, his type perfectly pressed, his smile razor thin. Without even facing her, he muttered, "We don't do walk-ins from thrift stores." She blinked. "I asked about the car," she repeated, a little firmer this time. Now he turned. His eyes scanned her up and down like she was a smudge on the showroom floor. His smile widened, not friendly, but cruel. Amused. "That," he pointed at the SLR, "isn't for window shoppers. Maybe try a used Ford dealership down the street. They might let you sit inside." The receptionist chuckled. Another salesman smirked behind a cappuccino. Her hands were trembling now. Not from fear, from humiliation. She nodded. Just once. And turned to leave, the soft chime of the door trailing behind her like an afterthought. What they didn't know was this. Tomorrow was Saturday. And she wouldn't be alone. The dealership opened at 10. At 10:05, she stepped through the doors again. This time, she wasn't alone. A tall man walked beside her. Sharp navy suit, custom-tailored. Polished shoes that clicked against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to judgment. He didn't speak much, he didn't need to. The quiet power in his stride said everything. Her hand was lightly resting on his arm, but her posture had changed. Straight. Unshakable. She looked around the room not with timid eyes, but with the calm certainty of someone who already knew how this story ended. The same manager from yesterday was at the desk, chatting with another customer. He looked up, and froze. His smile faded. It took him a moment, just a moment, to recognize her. But when he did, the blood drained from his face like someone had flipped a switch. He opened his mouth to speak, but the man beside her beat him to it. "We're here to buy a car," he said, his voice smooth and level. "A specific one," she added. "The Mercedes SLR. The one you told me I wasn't good enough to look at." The manager's jaw twitched. "That model is extremely rare." "We know," the man said, pulling a sleek black card from his wallet and placing it on the counter. "No need to talk numbers. We're paying full price. Now." Silence spread through the showroom like a ripple in still water. And just when the manager reached for the terminal, trying to recover, the man leaned in slightly and said, "We'll also be buying one more thing today." The manager blinked. "What's that?" The man smiled. "Your reputation." For a moment, no one moved. Her eyes were locked on the manager, not with anger, but with something colder. Disappointment. Like someone watching a bad actor forget his lines in a play they'd already seen 100 times. He cleared his throat. I didn't know she was." "Important," the man interrupted, arching a brow. The woman let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "You don't have to explain. You saw what you wanted to see. Just a woman in cheap shoes. Not worth your time." The receptionist stared wide-eyed, unsure whether to disappear into her chair or run. The manager tried to smile again, to fake charm. "Let's not make this bigger than it is. Everyone has bad days, right?" She stepped forward, her voice steady. "Do you know what it feels like to be humiliated in front of strangers? To be treated like trash because someone assumes they're better than you?" He didn't answer. She didn't expect him to. For a second, her gaze drifted toward the very car that started all of this, the silver SLR. Its curves were beautiful, but what she saw wasn't the car. It was the moment yesterday, the sting in her chest, the fire she had to swallow just to keep walking. Her husband turned to her gently. "You sure this is the one?" She nodded once. "It's the one." He looked back at the manager. "Wrap it up. We'll take it today." The transaction began. Silent. Tense. Precise. But something had shifted in the room. Everyone felt it. That quiet storm, when people realize they made a mistake and it's far too late to fix it. Then came a question, unexpected, quiet, but heavy. From the receptionist. "Excuse me, who are you?" The woman turned her head slowly, met her eyes, and smiled for the first time. "The woman your boss told to get lost." The SLR was stunning up close, silver like moonlight poured over glass, aggressive in its stance yet elegant in motion. But her eyes weren't on the car. They were on him. The manager. Same slick back hair, same expensive watch, but this time, his confidence had cracks. His smile? Gone. His charm? Shaken. His ego? Flickering like a faulty light bulb. He was trying to recover, straighten his tie, smooth his voice. But it was too late. The atmosphere had shifted, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. "You remember me?" she asked softly. His throat moved, but no words came. The receptionist, younger than both of them, looked between them with wide eyes. She clearly hadn't been there yesterday, but she felt the weight of it now. The woman stepped forward, slow and measured, her voice like a quiet blade. "Yesterday, I walked in here and asked a question. And instead of answering, you humiliated me. Publicly. Loudly. You made sure everyone heard it." The manager's face twitched. Look, I had no way of knowing." "Knowing what?" she cut in. "That I'm married to someone rich? That I could afford the car?" Her husband stepped in, calm but direct. "So you only treat people well if they look rich?" The silence that followed was the kind that exposes truth, not by force, but by how impossible it is to deny it. She turned to the SLR, ran her fingers across the flawless hood, and exhaled slowly. "I didn't come here yesterday to buy anything," she said. Her husband tilted his head slightly. "No? No," she repeated. "I was early for lunch. I had time to kill. I thought, why not walk around? I've always loved cars. Since I was a kid. My father used to work on old engines in our garage. I like the smell of oil and steel." For the first time, her voice had warmth in it. Not for them, but for the memory. "I wasn't here to prove anything. I just missed that feeling." She turned back to the manager. "And instead, I got a reminder of how people treat you when they think you're nobody." That word, nobody, hung in the air like smoke. The receptionist looked down at her desk. Maybe she was thinking about all the people she'd smiled at only after seeing what bag they carried. The woman stepped closer, now face to face with the man who dismissed her. "You didn't just insult me. You insulted the woman I used to be. The one who walked into places like this and got ignored. The one who had to pretend she wasn't embarrassed." A beat passed. Then she added, quieter. "That version of me? She remembers everything." Her husband placed a hand gently on her back. Protective. Supportive. No words, just presence. The manager opened his mouth again, probably to apologize. But she was already turning away. She didn't want an apology. She wanted him to remember this the next time someone walked in wearing a $20 coat. And oh, he would. The sale was nearly done. Papers printed. Contract signed. The sleek silver SLR stood at the entrance, waiting like a loyal dog for its new owner. The manager tried to act professional, but his hands betrayed him, twitching with every signature. The kind of nervous energy that comes when you realize you just handed a loaded gun to the person you tried to step on. Her husband leaned against the counter, watching him work. "Tell me something," he said casually. "Do you usually treat your customers like garbage?" The manager looked up, stiff. "Of course not. We pride ourselves on service." Her voice cut through. Calm. Precise. "You pride yourself on guessing net worth by the brand of someone's shoes." The room went quiet again. She stepped forward, now fully in control. "You know, I wasn't even planning on buying a car. I was just killing time yesterday. I was early for lunch with my husband." She glanced at the SLR, then back at the manager. "But after how you treated me? I figured, why not?" The receptionist blinked. "You weren't going to buy anything?" "Nope," she said with a shrug. "Not until he made it personal." Her husband smiled. "Let's just say we believe in rewarding lessons." The receptionist murmured, "A lesson?" She said, walking slowly toward the SLR. "You don't get to decide who matters based on your limited imagination. Every person who walks through those doors is a somebody. And yesterday, I was a nobody, right up until you gave me a reason not to be." She opened the door of the car, slid into the leather seat like she'd been there 100 times. Then turned, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Thanks for the inspiration." The engine roared to life, low, smooth, deadly. And as the dealership doors opened to let them out, the manager stood frozen. He didn't just lose a sale. He'd been turned into a story. The hum of the dealership printer was the only sound as the final contract slid out. The manager fumbled with the papers, hands just barely steady. It wasn't the complexity of the sale that rattled him. It was the presence of the two people across from him. Especially her. She said almost nothing now. Just watched. Calm. Almost relaxed. But not smiling, not yet. He handed over the contract, trying to sound normal. "If you'll just initial here, and here." She took the pen slowly, signed with perfect precision. The platinum card rested on the counter like a silent threat. The kind of object that doesn't need to be explained, everyone in the room knows what it means. The receptionist watched with the kind of stillness reserved for live theater. She wasn't breathing. No one was. Then her husband broke the silence. "Tell me," he said, casually inspecting a nearby brochure, "do you usually lose sales this large before noon?" The manager looked up, pale. I didn't lose this one." Her voice slid in, soft as snowfall. "Didn't you?" He blinked. And that's when it hit him. He hadn't just lost a sale yesterday. He'd lost something much bigger, his credibility. She walked over to the SLR again, that same car he refused to even let her near the day before. She trailed her fingers along the line of the hood, not like a buyer, but like an owner. Her voice came slow, almost reflective. "You know what I was wearing yesterday?" she asked without turning around. He didn't answer. "A parka I bought 5 years ago. Shoes from a clearance rack. And you treated me like I was less. Not just poor, irrelevant." Now she turned, and this time, her gaze cut sharper. "Let me guess, if I'd walked in with red bottoms and a diamond bracelet, you'd have brought me espresso and opened every damn car door with a bow." She stepped closer. "But you didn't offer service. You offered judgment." She paused. And here came the twist, the hook that flips the whole room. "I've worked customer service. I know what it's like to fake a smile for people who look down on you. So you know what really surprised me yesterday?" He shook his head, quietly. "That you'd become one of them." The room was still. Too still. She took a step back, voice now calm again. "I didn't come back here to punish you. I came back to remind you. This job isn't about guessing wallets, it's about respect." Her husband placed a hand on the car key. "And now that the sale is done." She met the manager's eyes one last time. "Let this be the most expensive lesson you never saw coming." The doors to the dealership slid open. The SLR growled to life like a sleeping beast awakened. She climbed in with quiet elegance, the kind of confidence money can't buy. And as they pulled away, the manager stood frozen, surrounded by luxury, but hollow. He hadn't just been outplayed. He'd been outclassed. The silver SLR sliced through the streets of Munich, drawing stares as it passed. But inside the car, it was quiet. That kind of quiet that says everything without saying anything. She looked out the window, fingers drumming lightly on the leather armrest. He glanced over. "You're still thinking about it?" She smiled faintly. "Not about him. About how easy it was." He nodded once. "You were right. Same profile. Same arrogance." There was a pause. And then she said it, the line that changed everything. He was test number 7. Her husband laughed softly. 7 already? Damn. They really don't learn, do they? Because this wasn't the first time. They had done this before. On purpose. A social experiment. A game. A warning. A reminder. Once every few months, she'd walk into a high-end place, dressed plain, no jewelry, no makeup, no shield of wealth. And just wait. Wait to see how people treated her when they thought she was no one. She never yelled. Never argued. She just watched. Took mental notes. And then came the visit with her husband. Not to get revenge. To teach. "I told you," she said, glancing over, "you can't train people with money. You have to train them with regret." He smirked. "You sure you weren't a behavioral psychologist in your past life?" "Still am," she said. "Just with a better wardrobe now." The car turned onto a quieter road, city lights fading behind them. And far behind, in a dealership still recovering from the hit, a man sat at his desk, stunned, silent, and unknowingly added to a growing list of stories. Stories meant to be told. The road ahead stretched out, endless and dark. City lights faded into shadows, and the hum of the engine was the only sound for miles. He glanced at her again. This time, not with amusement, but with quiet curiosity. "You ever gonna tell me where it all started?" She didn't answer right away. Her gaze stayed on the road, but her expression shifted. Softer. Distant. "There was a boutique in Paris," she said finally. 8 years ago. I had just lost my job. We were barely making rent. I passed by this designer store, just for a moment of escape. I walked in, just to look." She took a slow breath. "They treated me like I was dirt. Like I was contaminating their air. One of them told me, 'We don't allow browsing from the street.'" He frowned. "You never told me that." I was embarrassed, she said, voice low. I walked out. Went home. Cried on the floor of that tiny apartment we had. And I promised myself something that night. Her fingers curled slightly. I promised that if I ever had the power to walk back into a room like that, I would. But not for revenge. She turned to him now, eyes sharp with clarity. To remind them that kindness should never depend on appearances. That you don't kick people when they're down, because you never know who they'll become. He reached over, took her hand gently. And for a moment, they sat like that, two people who had built everything from the ground up, now driving a car worth more than their old neighborhood. She smiled. "The funny thing is, I don't even like the SLR that much." He raised an eyebrow. "Then why buy it?" She squeezed his hand. "Because yesterday, it wasn't about the car. It was about the woman I used to be." By Monday morning, the video had already hit 1 million views. Someone, maybe a customer, maybe even the receptionist, had recorded the moment she stepped into the dealership for the second time. The sleek black card. The look on the manager's face. The roar of the SLR engine as she drove off without saying another word. The caption? "Don't judge her shoes, she might own the building." People were eating it up. Comments poured in. Queen behavior crown. This is better than any Netflix drama. He lost more than a sale. He lost his dignity. I work in luxury retail. We all got the group chat blowing up with this. By lunchtime, the dealership's Google rating had dropped a full star. Reporters started calling. PR teams scrambled. The regional manager flew in, red-faced and fuming. And the man at the center of it all, the one who'd smirked and said get lost, suddenly found himself at the heart of a viral lesson in humility. But the woman? She said nothing publicly. No statement. No interview. No post. Because the point wasn't attention. It was impact. That evening, she and her husband sat on their balcony, the city skyline glowing in front of them. She scrolled through her phone once, checked the video, smiled, then locked the screen and set it aside. Think he'll change? He asked. She sipped her wine. Maybe. Maybe not. But now everyone's watching him, and that's enough. He leaned back in his chair, grinning. You really are terrifying sometimes. She laughed. I know. Then she looked out at the lights, thoughtful. One day, someone else will walk into a place like that, dressed like I was. And maybe, just maybe, they'll get treated right because of what happened this week. A month passed. The story faded from headlines, as stories do. New scandals, new trends, new distractions. But in quiet corners of the internet, in luxury service training seminars, and in whispered conversations between managers, her name still lingered. Not her real name, of course. They never knew it. She was simply the woman with the SLR. A legend, built not on wealth, but on presence. The dealership replaced the manager. Quietly. Internally. They never admitted why. But everyone knew. The receptionist got promoted. She smiled more now. Looked people in the eye when she greeted them. She said welcome like she meant it. And across the country, in boutiques, in showrooms, in high-end restaurants, a quiet shift began. Subtle. But real. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was respect. But when someone walked in wearing sneakers and no brand names, people thought twice before judging. And as for her? She kept walking into rooms like that. Still in plain clothes. Still quiet. Still watching. Because change doesn't come from shouting. Sometimes, it comes from one woman, walking in, being underestimated, and rewriting the rules without ever raising her voice. And somewhere, far from the dealership, far from the spotlight, she smiled to herself as she passed another glossy window. Wondering who would be next. End.